Welcome, kiddies! I am the Kaiju no Kami, and today we're going to step away from the Kaiju genre and talk about something else. Tales from the Crypt. Tales from the Crypt originated as a comic book series during the 50s from EC Comics. It was a series of comics that featured different stories and, depending on the book, a different host. There was the Crypt Keeper, the Old Witch, and the Vault Keeper. It doesn't matter if the stories came from the Vault of Horror, the Crypt of Terror, Tales from the Crypt, crime suspense stories, or even Two Twisted Tales. They were all fair game for this show, and it really did help enhance it. Each episode had an opening and closing featuring the Crypt Keeper, voiced by John Buster Bunny Kassir, who would always try to bring a morbid sense of punishable humor to the story. The series featured all sorts of segments, from classic horror monsters such as werewolves, vampires, and mummies, to more grounded stories about undertakers and criminals. No subject matter was off the table, and as such, it created a nice variety of episodes. It does not matter who you are or what your tastes are. There is going to be at least one episode in this series that appeals to you, because that's just what this series was. It was a variety, as if each episode was a mini movie. And that is part of its charm. You didn't need to watch a whole bunch of episodes to understand one episode. You could just watch one episode and be done with it. Not to mention, the show was full of notable actors like Christopher Reeves, Margot Kidder, John Vernon, John Glover, David Warner, Michael Ironside, Malcolm McDowell, Martin Sheen, the incredible Lance Henriksen, Dan Aykroyd, Kirk Douglas, Eric Douglas, John Lovitz, and the great legendary man who played Gomez Adams, John Astin. Former James Bond star Timothy Dalton was in an episode, as was eventual James Bond star Daniel Craig. Upcoming names such as Brad Pitt, Ian McGregor, Colin Salmon, Tracy Lords, and Billy Zane were featured here. There are so many names to be found in the series. I could just go on for hours talking about them, who they are, what they've been in. There will be movies that I will say, oh, that's so-and-so from Tales from the Crypt. That's how rich this series is. And let's not forget about the opening theme to this series. The masterful Danny Elfman was just at the top of his game when he created this theme. When you think of Tales from the Crypt, you just cannot go without thinking about this theme. Anyway, this is about my top 10 favorite episodes of Tales from the Crypt of all time. And it is actually a pretty hard list to come up with, because there are 93 episodes and almost all of them are really, really good. So I had a hard time narrowing this list down to just 10. Nevertheless, here it is. My top 10 favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes. You Murderer. The episode that kicks off this list is an interesting one. The tale itself is pretty basic, with Lou's wife and her new lover, also Lou's surgeon, conspiring to kill him and take his money. However, it is told in a first-person perspective, as if the viewer were the main character, Lou Spinelli. Lou had recently gone through plastic surgery to run away from the law, and he now looks like one of the greatest actors of all time, Humphrey Bogart.
Haven't I seen this guy someplace before? Nah.
First billboard will say, "Here's looking at you, kid. Here's looking at you, kid. Hair's looking at you, kid."
That's good, very good. I like it.
The people behind this episode took footage from various movies Bogart starred in and spliced them into the episode to add something new and different to the series. And given that this was the finale episode to season 6, or rather the 80th episode of the series, that was something that was desperately needed. Creep Course. I am a sucker for anything that includes Egyptian mythology, and this one definitely fits the bill. Not to mention, it features some really great characters played by Anthony Michael Hall and Beetlejuice's Jeffrey Jones. It follows the story of a lonely girl named Stella who gets tricked into helping a football jock try and study for an upcoming midterm. Things go awry as the jock realizes there is no way he is going to pass the test no matter how much he studies, so he asks Stella to help him be able to steal the test answers away from their teacher.
You can make an appointment to go over there, have a look at this junk.
for extra credit or something. When you have him distracted, I'm gonna go in there and make a copy of the midterm.
In doing so, things turn deadly and she comes face to face with a few thousand-year-old mummy. There isn't too much more I want to say about this episode because I don't want to give it all away, but it is a really fun and enjoyable episode, and the ending is kind of funny. Werewolf Concerto. This episode features the previously mentioned Timothy Dalton, and he is just awesome in it. He plays a man on vacation in the woods where a werewolf has been murdering people. A man has been hired to hunt the werewolf, and Dalton starts to try to figure out who the hunter is, while also befriending a rich woman who doesn't seem to be around at all during the day. Another great aspect of this episode is the makeup for the werewolf, as it just looks incredible and harkens back to the old Universal classic monster horror days. Carry on Death. I don't know why I love this episode, I just do. There isn't any true horror to be held here, but the episode does a great job in its suspense. A man is on the run from the law and being pursued by a cop throughout a desert as he tries to make his way to Mexico.
Women. Can't live with them. Can't fit more than one in a trunk at a time.
Everything that can go wrong for this man does, and it goes to show why you shouldn't piss off karma. Add to it that you have a nice change of scenery from the norm, and you have one truly gratifying, eye-popping episode.
On his back, huh? Made my life a whole lot easier. No. Guess you're chicken, Vulture. I think I better keep my eye on you.
The Man Who Was Death. This was the very first episode of the franchise, and it does a great job setting up the standard. It has a high-class tune during its opening credits that you cannot help but be hooked right from the get-go. Add on top that William Sadler narrates his own story with his sick and twisted point of view you can't help but admire.
Nice thing about electricity is it's clean. Of course, I have seen a few heads smoke after it's all over.
He is an executioner who finds himself out of a job, so he starts to pursue his own brand of justice.
I find you both guilty of the murder of your former wife, Mr. Carney, and I sentence you to death.
Ted's idea. I didn't know he'd really go through with it. You gotta believe me.
Shut up, Cynthia! No, wait, no!
Only to have it come back to bite him in the ass later on. It is quite shocking to see how well done the first episode of a TV series can be. Yeah, you do have the Crypt Keeper looking a little stiff, but that aside, this episode is flawless. Came the Dawn. Not to be confused with Comes the Dawn that featured Michael Ironside in Vampires in Alaska. This episode proves why you shouldn't pick up hitchhikers. Of course, it also shows why you shouldn't hitchhike either. Like a pack of cards, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yes. Shit.
That is part of what makes this episode so intriguing as a man picks up a woman whose truck engine has died. She believes she is in for the best robbery of her life as the man who just picked her up seems really rich. On the other hand, he also seems to have a psychotic wife that also shows up at the wrong moment. There is so much suspense and tension built up throughout the episode that it's hard to figure out how it is all going to play out until its shocking ending, which will leave you axing for more. Cutting cards. Just like with The Man Who Was Death, the music to the opening of this episode is fantastic. It leads into what is a dark comedic episode starring Lance Henriksen. He plays a gambler who is so sick of dealing with his rival that they start to try whatever is necessary to run the other out of town. It all comes down to them facing off against each other in a game called Cutting Cards, where the loser has to give up a finger with each loss.
Careful, only one. Bad. Oh, God damn.
Unfortunately, these two knuckleheads are way too stubborn to know when it is time to quit. Yellow. This episode is one of the finest pieces to grace the series thanks to its extended runtime that really allows the story to be fleshed out beyond the norm. It features a platoon of actors with the likes of Kirk Douglas, his son Eric Douglas, Ghostbusters star Dan Aykroyd, and Lance Henriksen returns. The episode is set during World War II with a father who is a wartime hero and a general to a squad that his cowardly son is part of.
You were supposed to warn us. Why didn't you warn us?
It goes through a lot of twists and turns, and the characters are just all interesting to watch because of the lies and deceptions that never end. Just when you think all is going to be okay with a nice father-son bonding moment,
Martin, you're right. I haven't been much of a father to you. It's wrong to force you into that mold, and I'm sorry.
something comes up that changes everything just to settle one man's ego. This was also the first time a World War II setting was used, so it brought something new and interesting to the franchise, which this was its third season finale. Television terror. Long before the Blair Witch Project, we had television terror. Morton Downey Jr. plays Horton Rivers, an ass of a journalist who is investigating a murder house from years ago on live TV in order to get the greatest ratings his network has ever seen. Unfortunately for him, the spirits of the victims who were murdered by the owner of the house still reside in it and care for nothing but revenge.
Are you guys getting this?
The best thing about this episode is how much atmosphere and horror is at play here. This is how you do a haunted house story, and one with a camera. Think of it as being the origins to a found footage movie, but done in a creative way to make it stand out among the rest of the crowd. Especially in, what, 1990 was when this aired? Before I get to my number one pick, I do want to present some honorable mentions because this was a hard list to make. There are 93 episodes to choose from, and narrowing it down to 10 was pretty hard. These 5 I'm going to show you are ones that I really kept going back and forth between whether I wanted them on my top 10 list or not.
Sex with the supernatural.
Nora? Is that you?
Careful, Alan, you might spook.
Who's a psychologist, me or you?
That nobody cares about.
There's a whole bunch of FBI agents are going to be getting on in Peoria.
FBI? Really?
And they're going to go through this train inch by inch before we get to Chicago. Every car, every nook, every cranny, every bag.
God, that smells good. Even the coffee tastes better.
And finally, the creme de creme episode of the series, my ultimate favorite episode, is... Showdown! There is nothing finer in this franchise than combining the elements of modern day horror and mixing them in with a western. This episode starts looking like your typical western when things take a turn and it jumps into modern day as our lead, Billy Quintain, finds himself being haunted by those he killed.
If you listen real close, you can hear the voice of that poor lost soul up there, screaming like a banshee.
Well, that's enough of that, folks. Let's mosey on down the trail. There's still lots more to be seen here.
It puts an interesting spin on your everyday ghost story. This is what makes it stand out amongst the crowd of being my absolute favorite episode out of all of the other 92 choices. There is no finer episode out there. Well, that brings my list of my top 10 favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes to an end. I hope you have enjoyed this list, and please post in the comments below your favorites list because I'm curious to see which ones you like the most. Until next time, bye.